Welcome to Conversations with your host Marion here on Faith FM 99.9. Come join us as we listen in on conversations with artists, pastors, authors, and people whose lives have been changed by God. And now, here's your host, Marion.
I often have very talented guests in the studio with me, and today is no exception. But one thing is very different about this musical artist, and that is that she plays country music, and she is good at it. Kalee Hric, welcome to Faith FM.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I met Kalee at the GMA Covenant Awards. That was back in the fall of 2013. And that night, we talked about getting together for a conversation here in the studio. Now, Kalee, you're not too far away. You're from just down the 401. Where do you live?
Just outside of Windsor, actually.
Okay. And you are married?
Yes.
And any children?
I have a son who's grown. He's on his own. He's been on his own for a while.
As a country musician, I wasn't actually, or I guess you're labeled country, we'll get into that, but I wasn't really familiar with your music because, of course, the Faith FM format is more adult contemporary. But when I heard a bit of your life story, I knew we had to share your testimony as well as some of your music with our listeners. So let's talk about your music first. Let's just start right off the beginning. I'm calling you country, but you've already corrected me off the air. Not so much country. That's kind of where you're classified. Sounds like you're a little bit more middle of the road. How would you classify it?
Somewhat adult contemporary or contemporary Christian.
Now, you had decided what you wanted to do when you grew up, when you were really young.
I was 4 years old when I knew I was going to be a singer.
4.
That's
amazing. Where were you and how did this come to you?
I was under the table. I was small enough to walk under the table without hitting my head. And this is before Britney Spears. We didn't have all these videos and we didn't, see stars like that. My mom and dad, they took us to the drive-in movies and we saw the Grand Ole Opry. And I saw those singers up there and I knew. And I was 4. I was just a little girl.
Wow. Yeah. Now, you have siblings.
Yes.
And as you were growing up, I was reading that you were actually sang with your sisters in harmony. You put on little concerts in your backyard.
Yes, we sold tickets.
What fun.
Our neighbor came and took pictures.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Yeah. You just all you needed was a promoter. You'd have been good to go.
I know. I still sing with my sisters. One in particular, we sing a lot.
Cool.
A lot, yeah.
Oh, cool. Now, did you also sing in your church or Sunday school choir or anything like that? Yeah, okay. Yes. So music was right in there. And then in your teen years, you were writing songs and traveling. How old were you when you started writing?
Probably around 17.
You settled down in Windsor and started to sing in a choir. Mm-hmm. And then I hear that you were part of a quartet. Tell us about now see if I say this right, the Melodiers?
Melodiers, yes.
Tell us a little about that.
I think there were 4 sisters and myself, a piano player and a tenor sax player. We would go into the nursing homes and chronic care units in the hospitals and sing old standards and old golden oldies.
And how old would you have been then?
Oh, my son was little. So it was
a little while ago.
I think I did that for about 5 years with that little. And we did Sidewalks of New York. Hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. It's so nice to have you back where you belong.
You had some fun with that. Yeah, that's great. And
the seniors loved it.
Oh, yeah, I bet. So you went from the Melodiers, and then there was the Mellotones. And what was that about?
That was the same tenor sax player, and it was just a 4 or 5 piece band, and we would get together. We did a couple of fairs and stuff, so it didn't last for too long, but it was the same tenor sax player. He was so sweet.
And you were the lead vocalist.
Yes.
So that sounded like you were kind of taking some real steps forward musically, but you weren't doing any CDs or anything at that point yet.
No, and I was doing cover songs. I wasn't singing my own material at that time.
Okay. Now, then I read here that you joined SOCAN. First of all, tell us, what is SOCAN?
SOCAN is the organization that collects and distributes your royalties from radios and CD sales and things like that.
Okay, so this means now you've got a single that you're ready to go and get on the radio. So things have changed a little bit. You're not just doing the quartet thing anymore. That's great.
Well, at that time, I think you joined as a songwriter. And when your songs got published, that's when you would become a member of SOCAN.
Well, we're just catching the highlights of your musical journey right now, and we'll hear what was happening to you as a person in just a few minutes, because there is quite a story there. In 94, your direction changed, and you wrote different kinds of songs that showed the Lord's influence. Then you did what any Canadian country musician does, move to Nashville. Tell us about some of your performances there. Who did you connect with in Nashville?
I met quite a few stars, you know. I met Billy Cyrus just at a party, but it was fun. I did some writers' nights, and I also did Sunday morning country on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry.
Wow.
It wasn't the Grand Ole Opry show itself, but it was on that stage. It was on a Sunday morning, and it was a gospel event. To be able to sing on that stage, that was quite an honor.
Oh, I bet. Because that's where the dream started.
Yeah.
I see that you've worked with Rebecca Holden and Susan Jacks. I mean, that's dropping some good names there.
Yes.
And then you eventually came back to Canada. When was that?
Only 14 months after I had gone down.
Oh,
So I
okay. So,
hadn't
you
been
didn't
there for
spend
long.
years.
No.
You just mixed and mingled quickly with all these big names.
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing musically now?
I'm writing, learning how to play guitar, and we've got some radio releases, and I'm charting, you know, getting some songs on the charts, which is kind of fun. Just worked on a video shoot just a couple of days ago, and so there's going to be some more shooting and some editing and stuff like that to go through and work on, so that's pretty fun. On our new release, this is straight up country. This is my country song, you know, my one country song, and it's called If Jesus Was From Nashville.
Tell us a little bit about that song.
It's a tongue-in-cheek, all-in-fun song that I didn't want to write. It wrote itself. Every time I'd get content, I'm thinking, oh, can I put that in there? I can't write about that. I can't put this in there. Sure enough, I put it in there. The last couple of lines, when I was singing it and practicing it, like as I was writing it, and when those lines came to me, I'm like, oh, no, I cannot put them in there. But yet I did, and I believe them. I believe those lines. I had to put them in there. Once I thought of them, once I had sung them, there's no way I could not put them in there. It had to go in there. And it's like a surprise ending you just almost didn't see coming.
Exactly. I was going to introduce your song and just say it's a fun country song, but listen right to the end because Kalee brings it home to where we all live. Isn't that the truth?
If Jesus was from Nashville, he'd have a sweet guitar. He'd be a country singer. Yeah, he'd be a great big star. If Jesus was from Nashville, he'd create a media blitz with a string of #1 hits that would go something like this. I can't do any miracles in my own hometown. The government's on my back, and my buddies all letting me down. If Jesus was from Nashville, one thing would be quite clear, that he would get a record deal if he turned the water into beer. If Jesus was from Nashville, it might seem a little weird to see him wearing a cowboy hat with short hair and no beard. If Jesus was from Nashville, Amazing Grace would be his song, and we'd hear it on the jukebox in every honky-tonk, along with I can't do any miracles in my own hometown. The government's on my back, and my buddies all let me down. If Jesus was from Nashville, one thing would be quite clear, that he would get a record deal if he turned the water into beer. If Jesus was from Nashville, oh, it wouldn't be too long before he turned his sermons into song. You'd see him at the award show, the only guy in a tux and bare feet, 'cause he probably just came in from the farm where he was sifting the tares from the wheat. If Jesus was from Nashville, he'd probably have a truck and drive around in the muck when he's not out on tour in a great big shiny bus, traveling around from town to town, preaching to a bunch of sinners just like us. Just like us. Oh, come on, don't get all offended. We're just having a little fun, 'cause we all know that Jesus was from hell, but he couldn't do any miracles in his own hometown. The government was on his back, and his buddies all let him down. If Jesus was from Nashville, one thing would be quite clear, that he would probably still get crucified right here. Right here.
That's Kalee Hric, her latest single, If Jesus Was from Nashville, her most country song. We want to talk to you now, Kalee, about your personal life. And you said you would share, and I'm thinking this is going to be a tough story for you to share, and yet one that I think the listeners are really going to benefit from. You know, everything sounds so good. You're telling this story, and you tell it so quick, right? So we hear your whole life story in 10 minutes, and, you know, it all sounds so easy. But it was not smooth at all for you, as a child particularly. You were raised in Windsor. Tell us about your family life when you were little.
My mother had my older sister and myself, and by the time I was 4 months old, her and my father broke up, divorced. And then when I was 4 years old, she met another man and got married. And so from the years from age 4 to age 15, so those 11 years, I lived in that home with that stepfather. I mean, it was normal family life. There were good times. There were some not so good times. He was very verbally abusive. And the verbal abuse is also twofold. It's emotionally abusive as well. You know, when you hear those things as a little child, it stops you from being creative. It's not encouraging. It's very discouraging. And it left me very broken, and I lacked confidence. I had no self-confidence whatsoever.
Those are such formative years, and a girl needs a dad. Can I ask you, do you know your biological father?
I met him when I was about 15.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, so you had the stepfather, and would you say that he tried to love you, or just he was there with your mom and you kids were just there?
We had a family life. Like I said, there were some good times and there were some bad times where he'd be angry and, you know, abusive and just get browbeating kind of a thing. But yes, he was daddy, you know, and so there were some good times. I was getting a little rebellious around those, you know, teenage years, and I ended up running away from home.
Well, I was reading that would be sort of the thing you would do, is you'd leave. Now, did you leave, like you said, you were rebellious, but was it because of Dad? Was it because of all the hurt that you endured that you were escaping from that? Or was it just a little bit of rebellion that I'm getting out of here?
I think it's all of the above. And I kind of slipped through the cracks a bit, you know, and that's what happens to girls. That's what happens to guys, too. They end up slipping through the cracks, and there's no safety net to hold them up. And I think my mother, she was angry at times. She's a good mom, but I think she was very needy. I think she didn't get the love that she needed from her father, so she got into a bad relationship as well. And then my sisters and I, you know, we've ended up going from one relationship to another. Let me just say I went from one relationship to another. And then finally, Jesus.
You left home, ran away at 15. Now, this would have been around the time you started doing the songwriting thing and
trying to get...
you were starting to run around, traveling
Yes.
the country kind of, and trying to connect with other songwriters and so on and get that going. Now,
Yes.
you were kind of doing this all on your own, or did you
Yes.
return home at this time?
No, it was all on my own. And it was because I had that dream in my heart since I was so little, and I was trying to pursue that. And running down to Nashville, 96, 97, around in there, and, you know, going down there, just kind of jumping the gun a little bit and running ahead of God, pulling God along, saying, come on, God, come on, we're going. He's like, wait, no, you're not ready. I'm like, yeah. And now he's like, go ahead, you're ready. And I'm like, no, wait. He's like, yeah, you are, go. And he pushes me right into it. But he had prepared me for many, many years. You know, the last few years of walking just with him, he's had me soaking and saturating in the word and in praise music, and that's, you know, just basically sequestered just in his holy place.
You didn't pick that up from home, I don't think. And you were raised, I read, in a Catholic church, and you went to a Catholic school.
Yes.
But you wrote in your bio that you didn't really know the Lord at that time.
I didn't know the Lord.
So then you did this runaway thing. You were on your own. I'm thinking, okay, when I was 15, I don't know what I would have done. Where do you go when you're 15? What do runaways do?
Well, you get on welfare. You take buses, trains. You know, the Lord protected me. The Lord kept me really, really close, even still, like on a very short leash. He didn't let me get too far out of his reach. He certainly was directing my steps, no question. No question.
Even though you really didn't know him yet, you
No.
still see his hand.
I knew of him. When I was in the Catholic, growing up Catholic, I knew of him, and I knew of the reverence the reverential love that the Catholic family has, but I didn't know him as a personal savior.
So along the way then, you've been a runaway, you've done this thing independently on your own, you're trying to do some of this thing, you see the Lord's hand in your life, you got married, and you had a child, and this was your son that you spoke of.
Yes.
And then did that marriage last?
No, we split